Did your wife sign both? Derek chose his answer carefully. They were authorized. My attorney, Helen Ward, made a note. For weeks, Derek had insisted I signed the papers myself. With both documents lying side by side, he had switched to a safer word: authorized. The judge noticed. These contracts state that your wife signed in Norfolk at 9:12 and 9:23 on April 14th. She removed a photograph from another file. Her employment records place her at a training facility before 6 that morning. At 9:19, she appears in this photograph beside a planning board. The photograph joined the contracts on the desk. The two locations are more than 100 miles apart. Derek leaned toward his attorney. Marilyn spoke before either man could stop her. Laura knew what he was building for the family. The judge turned toward the second row. Mrs. Hayes, you are not currently testifying. Marilyn sat back, gripping her purse. Beside Helen's chair was a sealed evidence bag containing an old black cell phone. Derek's father had recorded a conversation 7 months before the purchase. On that recording, Derek discussed my future retirement income, a clean copy of my signature, and why the lender would receive one document while I was never supposed to see the other. The court had not heard it yet. Neither had it seen the full version of an email Derek had cut apart to make it look as if I had given him permission. For a few seconds, he still believed there was a way out. Then I heard my 5-year-old son's voice in my memory. Mom, did my heart make Daddy lose his boat place? That question was the reason I was sitting in court. Not the property. Not the company. Not even the copied signatures. Ethan had been recovering from heart surgery when he began apologizing for costing too much. I did not understand everything when the hospital first called us. I thought Derek was trying to buy a waterfront business. I did not know the property was never the real target. My income was. And 4 months later, so was my retirement. My name is Laura Hayes. I was 44 and 4 months away from completing 20 years in Army logistics. At work, I checked every number. At home, I trusted my husband. Derek owned a boat repair company near the Chesapeake Bay. When we met, he had 1 employee, a rented workshop, and a truck that refused to start whenever it rained. We built the company together. I contributed money when he needed equipment. We refinanced our first home when the business expanded. During long assignments, he managed the household. For years, I believed we were partners. Ethan arrived after a long wait. He was 5 when this happened, with sandy hair, an obsession with sea animals, and a worn stuffed stingray named Captain Blue. The memory of Derek I held onto came from the night Ethan was born. He pressed our son against his chest and whispered, "We finally got you." That memory earned him more forgiveness than it should have. Derek's father, Raymond, was a retired shop teacher who disliked conflict. His mother disliked losing it. Marilyn was gracious in public and sharp in private, though she preferred remarks that could later be called concern. After one long assignment, Ethan ran across the yard and wrapped himself around my legs. Marilyn watched us. Children always remember who was there every day. Derek heard her. Later, when I told him the comment was deliberate, he opened the refrigerator and said, "Mom means well." You know how she talks. The conversation became about my reaction instead of her words. Eventually, silence felt easier. The waterfront purchase began as an expansion plan. The property had covered slips, a repair building, office space, and a small residence. Derek wanted it badly. I did not oppose the idea. I wanted to see the financing. Every time I asked, the answer changed. Investors were joining. Then they needed more time. The lender wanted new terms. The seller wanted a faster closing. One evening, I asked him directly, "Will my income or our house secure this loan?" Derek pushed his plate away. "Why do you ask questions like a prosecutor?" "Because you haven't answered one. We've discussed the property for months. Discussing it is not the same as agreeing to debt." He carried his plate into the kitchen. "Not everything has to become an operation, Laura." Ethan called from upstairs because he needed help with his bath. Derek left the room. We never finished the conversation. I called it avoidance. Derek treated it as permission. A few weeks later, Ethan was helping me unload groceries when he placed a carton of milk on the kitchen floor and sat beside it. The color had drained from his face. I crouched in front of him. "What happened?" He pressed one hand to his chest. "My heart is running." His pulse felt fast beneath my fingers. "Does it hurt?" He shook his head. "I'm tired inside." Our pediatrician referred us to a cardiologist. Derek attended the first appointment. He held Captain Blue while a technician attached sensors to Ethan's chest and asked the doctor sensible questions. For that hour, we were simply two frightened parents. The cardiologist explained that an abnormal band of tissue near Ethan's heart had begun interfering with blood flow. The condition was treatable, but surgery should happen within several weeks. During the explanation, Derek's phone lit up. Closing. He turned it face down. In the parking garage, I told him the purchase needed to wait. We don't know that. We know Ethan needs an operation. Insurance will handle it. Most of it. We'll manage. With what money? Derek opened the driver's door. Can we not turn one appointment into the end of the world? A week later, the hospital called to confirm our portion of the surgical cost. $4,800. The coordinator explained that we could use a payment arrangement, but the paperwork needed to be completed quickly to protect Ethan's place on the schedule. I opened our savings account while she was still speaking. The balance was $6,143. 2 months earlier, it had contained more than $28,000. More than $21,000 had been transferred into a company tied to Derek's purchase. I stepped into the hallway and called him. He answered on the third attempt. I'm with the lender. Where is our savings? It was transferred. You moved more than $21,000 without telling me. It's part of the deal. We need $4,800 for Ethan's surgery. The closing is tomorrow. Then return $4,800. I can't do that today. Our son's procedure could be delayed. He's getting the procedure. The hospital needs the agreement completed. Derek exhaled as though I were making a difficult day worse. You make every problem sound catastrophic. This is his heart. The deal comes before panic. Marilyn's voice came through the phone. Is she starting again? A moment later, she had the call. Laura, after all your years working for the government, surely you know there are assistance programs. Put Derek back on. He is securing Ethan's future. Ethan is sitting in a hospital. And you're there. Derek does not need to sit beside you while doctors do their jobs. We already had the money. The business has it now. She ended the call. I returned to Ethan's room. He had colored a hammerhead shark orange and pushed the blue crayon toward me. You do the water. I had barely touched the paper when a banking alert appeared on my phone. Someone had attempted to transfer most of the remaining balance. The bank blocked it because I had changed the security settings minutes earlier. The first transfers might have been reckless. The second attempt was deliberate. Derek was trying to empty the account before I could interfere with the closing. Raymond arrived that evening carrying sandwiches, lemon pie, and a white envelope. Ethan was asleep. There's $4,800 inside, he said. I tried to return it. I sold equipment from my old workshop. Does Marilyn know where the money went? No. I accepted it, because Ethan's surgery mattered more than my pride. Then Raymond placed a small brass key in my palm. A plastic tag read, Unit 214. Derek stored some business boxes with me last year. What's in them? I don't know. Why give me the key? Raymond watched Ethan sleeping. 2 months ago, Derek asked me to witness a loan document. Your name was on it. My fingers tightened around the key. What kind of document? It appeared to make you responsible for part of the debt. I never agreed to that. That's why I refused to sign. Raymond avoided arguments whenever possible. Refusing his own son meant the paper had frightened him. What did Derek say? He said you approved everything. And Marilyn? She said I was confused. He rubbed both hands against his knees. I should have come to you then. The hospital accepted the financial agreement the next morning. Ethan's surgery remained on schedule. I placed the key inside my purse. Every time I reached for my wallet, my fingers touched it. Unit 214. A locked room that might hold proof. Or nothing more than old invoices and Raymond's fear. Derek arrived later carrying flowers and a toy sailboat. He spoke warmly to a nurse, asking questions loudly enough to be heard from the desk. Once we entered an empty waiting area, his voice changed. Did Dad give you money? He made sure Ethan could have the operation. What else did he give you? The question came too quickly. What are you afraid he gave me? My father gets mixed up about financial matters. He understood the hospital bill. This isn't about the bill. No. Apparently it isn't. I asked whether he had placed my signature on any paperwork. We discussed the purchase for months. Did you sign my name? You signed preliminary documents. No. You sign forms constantly. I would remember guaranteeing a commercial loan. His tone softened. You've been under pressure. Maybe you don't remember every page. Ethan called from the room. Daddy, Look at my boat. Derek turned, smiled, and made an engine noise with the toy. The shift happened so smoothly that the previous conversation almost felt unreal. He could make a moment disappear before the person he hurt had decided how to respond. The night before surgery, Ethan handed me Captain Blue. You keep him while I'm asleep. I promised I would. After he fell asleep, I sat beside the window with the stuffed stingray in my lap, the key pressed against the lining of my purse. I wanted to know what was inside that storage unit. Then Ethan shifted beneath the blanket and reached toward me without waking. The records could wait. My son could not. Derek arrived 20 minutes before the nurses moved Ethan downstairs. Ethan caught his sleeve. Stay until I go to sleep. I'll be here when you wake up. Derek stayed until the bed reached the elevator. Then his phone rang. The lender needs me. His surgery starts in half an hour. There's nothing I can do in the operating room. You can stay. He left. Marilyn followed. Raymond remained with me, along with my younger sister, Megan. The operation lasted nearly 5 hours. During the second hour, I reached into my purse for a tissue and felt the key again. Derek had asked what his father gave me before asking whether Ethan's procedure was still scheduled. Whatever was inside Unit 214 frightened him more than our son's heart frightened him. The surgeon finally came out and explained that the obstruction had been more severe than expected, but had been successfully corrected. I thanked her, walked into the restroom, and cried from relief. Derek returned 3 hours later. He stood beside Ethan's bed, held his fingers, and asked Megan to take a photograph. That photograph appeared online beneath a message from Marilyn, praising her devoted son. I did not correct it. By the next morning, Derek had begun creating a record that mattered more than a social media post. He sent messages accusing me of excluding him from medical decisions and interfering with his business. 3 days after surgery, he filed for legal separation. The petition described him as Ethan's primary caregiver. It described me as rigid, controlling, and emotionally unstable. Attached was part of a voicemail I had left after discovering the transfers. The full message said, "Derek, return the money. Ethan is preparing for surgery, and I will not discuss the purchase until I see the documents. Do not move anything else." The transcript in his petition contained only, "I will not discuss this with you. Do not move anything." He had removed the sentence that explained it. Then the conflict reached Ethan. He asked whether his heart had made his father lose the boat place. Marilyn had told him that the business needed the money because he became sick. She called it an explanation. I removed her from the hospital visitor list. There was no long confrontation. Ethan was listening, and I did not want him to believe adults had to shout before they were allowed to protect him. He came home 6 days later. I taped his medication schedule to the refrigerator and slept beside his bed until he stopped waking in pain. One night, he touched my shoulder. Was I bad? No. Why would you ask that? Daddy had to buy the boat place because I cost too much. I switched on the lamp. You were sick. Taking care of you is our job. Is Daddy mad at me? No, sweetheart. I could not control what Derek felt. I could stop Ethan from carrying it. A few days later, I found 3 quarters and 2 dimes on the kitchen counter beside a folded note. For Heart Doctor. Ethan was arranging toy sharks on the living room carpet. What is this money for? So you don't have to ask Grandpa next time. There is no next time you have to pay for. But checkups cost money. That is for adults to handle. He pushed a plastic shark across the floor. Can I skip it if it's too much? No. Even if Daddy needs the money? Especially then. I kept the coins in a kitchen drawer for months. They reminded me what adult cruelty sounded like after passing through a child. One private attorney told me I could prove the money moved, but not yet prove how my signature had been used. Meanwhile, Derek's messages became polite enough to display in court. Please provide Ethan's medication schedule. I am concerned about your refusal to cooperate. I would like reasonable access to my son. I answered with appointment times and scheduled calls. During those calls, Ethan became quiet. Derek later claimed I was influencing him. For several days, I wondered whether fighting the separation would make Ethan's recovery harder. Then I found the backpack. It was hidden beneath his bed, packed with 2 shirts, a toothbrush, his shark book, and Captain Blue. I carried it into the living room. Are you going somewhere? Ethan froze. His eyes filled. Grandma said the judge might make me live at Daddy's boathouse. When did she tell you that? On Daddy's phone. He twisted the hem of his shirt around one finger. She said I should pack my favorite things so I won't cry when you're not there. I sat on the floor in front of him. No one is coming to take you tonight. But what if the judge picks Daddy? A judge doesn't pick a winner like a game. Grandma said Daddy needs me because you already have the army. I pulled him against me. He pressed his face into my shoulder. I packed Captain Blue because he knows you. The conflict was already inside his backpack. That night, I placed the key beside my phone and called Megan. We're going tomorrow. Megan had found an attorney named Helen Ward. Helen had worked with military families before moving into private family law. Her first question cut through everything else. What can you prove without asking a stranger to trust your memory? She reviewed the complete voicemail, the bank statements, and the separation filing. When I told her about Ethan's backpack, she closed the file. Write down his exact words. Do not question him again. I need to know what else they said. He is your child, Laura. Don't make him your investigator. The correction stung, because it was necessary. Helen notified the guardian appointed to evaluate Ethan's interests. She also warned me not to access private accounts or remove records without permission. Evidence becomes less useful when the way you found it becomes the story. Raymond signed written authorization for the storage unit that afternoon. Megan went with me. Unit 214 sat at the end of a concrete hallway beneath a flickering light. The key stuck halfway into the lock. For one terrible second, I thought Raymond had given me the wrong one. Then the cylinder turned. Inside were 5 boxes. 4 held invoices and employee records. The 5th was sealed with gray tape. Megan cut it open with a key from her car. A black binder lay on top. Derek was listed as managing member. Marilyn was named as his successor. My name appeared several pages later. Personal guarantor, Laura M. Hayes. A signature sat beneath it. The shape resembled mine. The capital L did not. It came from an older version I had stopped using years earlier. Megan read over my shoulder. Is that yours? No. The binder contained copies of my income records and a projection of my future retirement benefits. A blue note was attached to the projection. 20 years in August. Do not file before vesting date. The handwriting resembled Marilyn's. Beneath the binder was a second folder. Same property. Same closing date. Same signature. The first contract made me responsible for the debt. The second stated that I had transferred away any ownership interest for $10. Megan placed the pages beside each other. So you owe the money but own nothing? According to these, yes. The signatures were identical. Every stroke matched. I called Helen. She instructed us to photograph everything where we found it and leave the originals until they could be formally preserved. Before ending the call, she asked for the signing times. 9:12 and 9:23. Where were you that morning? I don't know yet. Find out. After that, the important pieces came together quickly. My vehicle had entered a training facility before 6 that morning. A photograph showed me standing beside a planning board at 9:19. The lender had never seen me. Derek brought both papers already signed and said I had been called back to duty. A specialist confirmed that the 2 signatures came from the same scanned image and had been processed on a company computer. Someone had taken a version of my name and made it agree to things I had never seen. Derek's attorney still had an argument. I might have approved the use of the signature in advance. We can prove where you were, Helen said. We can prove the signatures were copied. We still need something showing Derek knew he did not have permission. Before we found it, the guardian met with Ethan. Afterward, she asked to speak with me alone. Ethan had repeated one phrase during the interview. Daddy handles the everyday things. He could not explain what it meant. When asked who gave him medication, he named me. Who spoke with his teachers? Me. Who attended his appointments? Me and Megan. Then the guardian asked why he called Derek the everyday parent. Daddy said I need to remember it. Ethan also said, I sometimes became confused when I was tired. I heard Derek's voice from the hospital waiting room. Maybe you don't remember every page. The story he used to weaken my memory had reached our son. I called Helen. He coached Ethan. Do not text him. He gave our son answers. And an angry message will become his next exhibit. What am I supposed to do? Let the evaluator document it. I placed the phone face down and helped Ethan finish a puzzle. 2 days later, Raymond called. He had found his old cell phone. 7 months before the purchase, he had recorded a conversation with Derek and Marilyn. Raymond brought the phone to Helen's office inside a plastic bag. The screen was cracked near one corner. Derek had once asked him to invest retirement savings in the property. Raymond reviewed an early packet and noticed that I appeared responsible for debt without being listed as an owner. When he questioned it, Derek claimed I preferred to remain off public records. Marilyn said my work created ethical complications. Neither explanation made sense. They later accused Raymond of misunderstanding them. He recorded the next conversation to prove to himself that he had not. "Why didn't you tell me?" He kept his eyes on the phone. "I thought I could stop him privately." "You knew for 7 months." "Yes. And stayed quiet. I gave you the money and the key. I let myself believe that was enough." Helen had the recording authenticated. Before the hearing, Derek said Raymond was confused. Marilyn signed an affidavit, describing her husband as forgetful and easily influenced. An independent evaluation found no meaningful impairment. When I carried evidence, I was unstable. When Raymond carried it, he was confused. When Ethan repeated their words, he was impressionable. No one remained reliable once they stopped protecting Derek. At the hearing, Derek's attorney began with family photographs. Derek and Ethan fishing. Derek carrying him at a baseball game. The three of us beside a Christmas tree. The moments were real. The question was not whether Derek had ever loved his son. The question was what he chose when Ethan needed him and the business needed my name. Marilyn testified first. She described Derek as the more consistent parent and me as rigid and suspicious. Helen asked about the packed backpack. "I suggested Ethan keep his favorite things organized," Marilyn said, "in 2 shirts, a toothbrush, and a bag hidden beneath his bed. I was preparing him for possible change." "Did Derek know?" She hesitated. "Yes. So your son knew Ethan had been told to prepare to leave his mother. We were trying to reduce his anxiety. You created the fear and called the packing a solution." Derek's attorney objected. The judge directed Helen to move to the financial issue. The 2 contracts appeared on the screen. One created the debt. The other removed the ownership. Derek insisted I approved both. Helen displayed the training photograph. "Was your wife in Norfolk at 9:19 that morning?" "She could have signed electronically. The lender recorded an in-person signature. I cannot explain their internal process." "Did Laura tell you to use her scanned signature?" "She supported the purchase." "That is not the same thing." "It was understood between us." The specialist's conclusion followed. Both signatures came from the same digital image processed through a company computer. The judge placed the pages together. "Did your wife specifically authorize both uses of her signature?" "She agreed to the transaction." "Specifically?" "She gave general consent." General consent to discuss a purchase is not permission to execute debt in someone else's name. Derek's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we have documentary evidence of prior authorization." He handed Helen a printed email. I recognized the date. 7 years earlier, during a long assignment, Derek had needed my signature for an insurance renewal. One sentence appeared on the courtroom screen. "If something comes up while I'm away, use my scanned signature and send me a copy." My stomach tightened. Derek's attorney faced me. "Those are your words?" "Yes. You gave your husband permission to use your signature?" "For one insurance renewal. That limitation does not appear here, because the rest of the email is missing." Helen opened the complete thread. The subject line read, 2018 Liability Insurance Renewal. My full message said, "If the insurance renewal arrives while I'm away, use my scanned signature on that form only, and send me the complete copy before filing. Do not use it for loans, ownership changes, or anything else." The version Derek provided contained the middle sentence and nothing more. The judge addressed his attorney. "Were you given the complete email?" The attorney turned toward Derek. My client provided the printed excerpt. Derek had not found permission. He had removed the sentence that said no. After a brief recess, Derek claimed the records from Unit 214 might have been altered. Helen produced Raymond's written authorization, photographs showing the papers inside the box, and matching copies from the lender. That argument ended quickly. Raymond took the witness stand. Derek's attorney challenged his motives. "You are angry with your wife and son." "Yes." "Could that anger affect your testimony?" "My anger did not create those contracts." Helen asked about the old phone. After reviewing the authentication report and hearing Raymond identify the voices, the judge allowed the recording. Helen removed the phone from the evidence bag. Behind Derek, Marilyn whispered, "No." The audio began with a chair scraping across a floor. Then Marilyn's voice filled the courtroom. "Raymond, no one is stealing anything from Laura." Derek lowered his head. Raymond asked why I would guarantee debt without owning part of the property. Derek answered without hesitation. Because ownership complicates the separation later. His attorney stood. The judge told him to wait. Raymond asked what separation he meant. Derek explained that I would complete 20 years in August. My income could secure the credit line before then. Everything else could be negotiated afterward. Does Laura know you're using her records? Raymond asked. She knows I'm expanding. That isn't the same thing. Marilyn gave a short laugh. Laura signs whatever is put in front of her. Then Derek said, I already have a clean signature file. The judge removed her glasses. On the recording, Raymond told him he could not sign my name. No one is signing for her. We're preparing the documents. A minute later, Derek described the two-paper structure. The lender sees the guarantee. Laura never needs to see the transfer agreement. Raymond asked what would happen if I discovered it. She won't leave. Why? Because of Ethan. Derek sounded certain. She'll put up with almost anything if she thinks leaving could hurt him. Marilyn added, keep her calm until August. Just don't let her find the real transfer papers. Helen stopped the audio. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Derek stood so quickly that his chair scraped backward. You recorded me? The judge ordered him to sit. He ignored her. His attention was fixed on Raymond. You recorded your own son? Raymond remained still. You said that phone was gone. The accusation was aimed at Marilyn. Her face lost its color. Derek's attorney grabbed his sleeve. Sit down. Derek pulled away. Do you have any idea what you've done? The judge's voice hardened. Mr. Hayes, sit down now. His anger shifted toward me. You wanted this. You wanted them to hear a private conversation and pretend it was a plan. There are 2 contracts on that desk, I said. The conversation explains both. His attorney told him again to sit. Derek struck the table with one palm. I built that company while she was gone. I kept the house running. I raised our son while she played soldier, and now everyone is acting like I stole something that should have been mine. The courtroom became completely still. The calm businessman disappeared. So did the devoted husband from the photographs. The judge warned him that another outburst would have him removed. Derek lowered himself into the chair. His hands shook as he reached for the gold pen. It slipped from his fingers and rolled beneath the table. He did not pick it up. The judge addressed him. Did your wife authorize use of her signature on these contracts? She supported the deal. That is not the question. No written authorization exists. Did she verbally authorize use of the signature file? Derek stared at the empty space where the pen had been. I believed she had. Helen then presented the complete voicemail and the shortened transcript attached to Derek's petition. His attorney called the missing sentence an editing error. Helen produced an email Derek had sent to the attorney's assistant. Use only the last part. The beginning makes it sound financial. The judge read it twice. The guardian spoke briefly. Ethan loved both parents, but he had developed guilt about his surgery and fear that he would be removed from his home. He had also been given phrases to repeat about which parent cared for him. She recommended primary custody with me during recovery and structured contact for Derek until he completed counseling and stopped involving Ethan in the dispute. When the judge returned after the final recess, the contracts remained on her desk. So did the complete email Derek had tried to cut apart. His story had run out of missing pages. The judge made clear that the hearing would not determine criminal guilt. She did find serious concerns involving Derek's credibility, the handling of family money, the disputed signatures, and the pressure placed on Ethan. I received temporary primary custody and authority over Ethan's medical decisions during recovery. Derek received scheduled parenting time, initially supervised. He was ordered not to discuss the case, the business, or medical expenses with Ethan. He was also prohibited from preparing Ethan for future interviews. Marilyn was barred from unsupervised contact until further review. I received temporary use of the house. The court froze major business transactions and ordered relevant records preserved. Before ending the hearing, the judge addressed Derek. Believing your spouse would have agreed is not authorization. She touched the old email. Removing the part that says no does not turn it into permission. Then she glanced at the guardian's report. And teaching a child what to say does not make the answer true. The hearing ended shortly after 4. By the next morning, the lender had frozen the company's credit line and mailed notices to everyone named in the financing package. One of those notices went to Marilyn. 2 days later, she arrived at Raymond's apartment carrying a certified letter. I happened to be there because Ethan and Raymond were working on a model submarine in the spare room. Marilyn entered without taking off her coat. Raymond, tell me you didn't sign anything for Derek. I didn't. She placed several pages on the table. The lender says I personally guaranteed another credit line. How much? $96,000. A signature bearing her name appeared at the bottom. Marilyn pressed one finger against it. I did not sign this. Raymond studied the page. Are you certain? Of course I'm certain. For years, she had treated certainty as a privilege only she possessed. Now it sounded like fear. This is Laura's fault, she said. Once she started making accusations, the lender began questioning normal paperwork. Raymond checked the date. This was submitted before Ethan's surgery. Marilyn pulled the paper away. Derek would never do this to me. The sentence stayed in the room. Not because Derek had never done it before, because Marilyn had watched him do it to me. She had helped him explain it. You signed something for the business, I said. Her attention snapped toward me. I signed succession papers. What did they say? That I would help protect the company if something happened to Derek. Did they make you responsible for the debt? No. Did you receive a copy? He said the lender would send the final set. The same explanation. The same missing paperwork. I asked whether my name had appeared on the documents she saw. Marilyn gripped the letter. Derek said you approved the financing. Did you see my signature? Silence. Marilyn. Yes. Raymond stopped turning the pages. You knew he was using Laura's name? He said she had agreed. You heard him say she should never see the transfer agreement, Raymond said. I thought that was part of the ownership reorganization. I stepped closer to the table. You believed I agreed to carry the debt, but didn't need to see the document removing me from the property? I believed Derek was simplifying the structure. Because you were listed as his successor. Her mouth closed. She had not simply trusted her son. She expected to benefit. Derek had shown Marilyn a document, placing her beside him as successor manager. She believed she was helping protect the business from a wife who might interfere. What he had not shown her was another document carrying her own name. A personal guarantee. Exactly like mine. Marilyn lowered herself into a chair. He told me you had agreed. That is exactly what he told the lender about you. Before she could answer, the front door opened. Derek entered without knocking. Marilyn must have called him before arriving. He stopped when he saw me. What is she doing here? Raymond answered. She's helping Ethan with the submarine. Derek noticed the lender's letter. His expression changed. Mom, you shouldn't be discussing those documents with them. Marilyn lifted the guarantee. Did you use my signature? You signed the company package. I signed the succession agreement. It was all part of the same closing. This says I owe $96,000. It's a standard guarantee. I never saw it. Derek loosened his tie. You knew the business needed family backing. That isn't permission to sign my name. The words sounded strange coming from her. Derek heard it too. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Now you sound like Laura. Marilyn stood. Answer me. I just did. No. You told me what I should have understood. His patience broke. I was keeping the company alive. Do you think lenders care about family discussions? They want signatures and assets. You used my name. You were going to inherit the business if something happened to me. That document made me your successor. This one makes me responsible for the debt. Derek glanced at me. You explained it to her, didn't you? I asked her questions. You always do. Marilyn stepped between us. Did you copy my signature? Derek rubbed one hand across his face. I don't have time for this. That means yes. It means the paperwork was handled. By whom? He did not answer. Marilyn's voice dropped. I defended you. I know. I testified for you. I know. I helped you keep the transfer papers from Laura. Raymond closed his eyes. The admission was finally spoken without disguise. Marilyn continued. You told me I was protecting the family. Derek glanced toward the spare room where Ethan and Megan had gone quiet. You were protecting it. No. I was protecting you. He reached for the letter. Marilyn pulled it against her chest. Don't touch it. For the first time, Derek appeared to understand that both parents had stopped standing beside him. His father had given me the recording. His mother was holding a document carrying her own stolen signature. You're all willing to destroy everything I built, he said. Raymond answered from the table. You keep saying built when you mean took. Derek left without another word. 2 weeks later, An independent review confirmed there were two sets of papers carrying Marilyn's name. The first was the succession agreement she remembered signing. The second made her personally responsible for up to $96,000. The guarantee signature had been copied from a church scholarship form she once emailed Derek. He had used her genuine signature from one document to create consent on another. The same method he used on me. When the lender asked whether she authorized the guarantee, Marilyn gave the answer she had refused to accept from me. No, she called that evening. He used me too. Yes. I trusted him. So did I. I thought he was protecting the family. He was protecting the business. I was trying to help him keep what he built. You helped him use my name because you thought you were standing beside him. Marilyn became quiet. I didn't know he would do the same thing to me. No. You thought you were the person he was protecting. She asked whether Helen could help her. I gave her the office number. I did not celebrate. Marilyn had helped Derek hide the truth. She had frightened Ethan, questioned my memory, and defended the documents because she believed they protected her position. Being betrayed did not erase what she had done. But her guarantee was not a separate scandal arriving after the story had ended. It was the final page of the same plan. Derek used my income to secure the purchase. He used Marilyn's loyalty to protect it. Both of us were shown one version of the future, while another document waited out of sight. 3 days later, Derek came to the house and pounded on the front door. Ethan jumped from the couch. "Is Daddy mad?" I asked Megan to take him upstairs. Before stepping outside, I started the recorder on my phone. Derek's tie hung loose. His eyes were bloodshot. The lender froze the credit line. I know. My suppliers are pulling out. I waited. You turned both my parents against me. Your father heard the plan. Your mother found her signature on a guarantee. You told her what to believe. She read the document herself. You destroyed my company. My name was used on contracts I did not sign. You knew I wanted the property. I did not agree to the debt. He moved closer. Where is the phone? With my attorney. And the contracts? Preserved. Give them back. They are evidence. They're talking about fraud. You should speak to your lawyer. The property may be sold. Yes. My company could close. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Lower your voice. Ethan can hear you. You took my son. The court gave you visitation. Supervised visitation. You told him what to say to the evaluator. I told him not to forget who takes care of him. He is 5. He's old enough to know when his mother is never home. The sentence was meant to hurt me. Instead, it confirmed what the guardian had documented. You allowed him to believe his surgery damaged your business. I never said that. Your mother did while helping you hide the papers. He pointed toward the house. You made everyone think I abandoned him. You left before the operation. I knew you would handle the hospital. The words settled between us. He expected me to handle Ethan. The money. The consequences. Everything except the truth. What else did Dad give you? He demanded. He had not asked once how Ethan was recovering. A truck entered the driveway. Raymond stepped out carrying a small box of modeling paint. Derek turned toward him. You ruined my life. Raymond closed the truck door. No. I told the truth about what you were doing. You chose her over your own son. Raymond stopped near the porch. I chose the grandson you left in surgery, so you could close a loan in his mother's name. Derek's anger faltered. This was supposed to be temporary. Which part? I asked. He said nothing. The debt? His eyes moved toward the street. The signatures? Silence. The marriage? A police vehicle slowed beside the curb. Megan had called the non-emergency number after hearing the pounding. Derek returned to his truck. Before leaving, he said I could have handled everything privately. I had handled his problems privately for years. That was how they kept becoming mine. The divorce took 11 months. The lender withdrew financing, and the property was sold under court supervision. Derek's company later closed. The transferred savings were included in the settlement. I was not held responsible for the disputed debt. Marilyn was also released from her guarantee after the signature review, though the process forced her to admit how much she had known about the documents carrying my name. Derek's contact with Ethan gradually became unsupervised after counseling, parenting education, and months of compliance. Ethan's recovery came first. For several months, stairs exhausted him. Then one afternoon, he raced Megan's dog across the backyard. He reached the fence, turned around, and pressed both hands against his chest. I started toward him. He was smiling. "Mom?" My heart didn't make me stop. I laughed. No, it didn't. His scar faded into a pale line. The guilt took longer. Whenever a medical bill appeared, he watched my face. When I mentioned a follow-up appointment, he asked whether it cost too much. I gave him the same answer each time. Grown-up money is not your responsibility. Eventually, he stopped asking. 4 months after the hearing, I completed 20 years of service. My unit held a small ceremony. Megan attended. Raymond sat in the second row. Ethan wore a shirt covered in tiny anchors because he believed anchors made anything official. I had once believed strength meant keeping everything functioning, even when the people around me refused to carry their share. Looking back, I had spent years confusing endurance with strength. Endurance kept the household moving. It also allowed Derek to believe I would absorb every consequence. The 2 contracts remained in a locked file. One gave me the risk. The other removed me from the ownership. Our marriage had worked that way long before anyone copied my signature. I carried the emergencies and explanations. Derek carried the public version of success. He believed my love for Ethan would keep me from leaving. For a while, it kept me trying. In the end, that same love made staying impossible. Raymond moved into a small apartment near a public park. Every other Saturday, he and Ethan built models at a workbench in the spare room. Their first project was a wooden rescue boat. Ethan painted it red. Along the side, in uneven white letters, he wrote one word: home. For the first time in a long while, I knew he understood exactly what that word meant.